what needs to be done. The law has to be broken. There needs to be mass civil disobedience. Mass civil disobedience.
We're going to have to mobilise for anti-deportation actions. We're going to have to put our bodies on the line, sit down either in front of detention centres or the cathedral or the trades hall, other places that have declared themselves sanctuaries for refugees.
And hopefully we are gonna take action, and we are going to. If worst comes to worst, we're gonna bring them to our houses and let them stay there, and let the police or whoever wants to come and force them to get out, let them do it.
And I'm very pleased to say that the Victorian Trades Hall Council will open the hall as a refuge for refugees. And I tell you what, we will defend them to the utmost, and I'll tell Mr Turnbull this as well, we will defend our hall, so try and come and get them.
Our people are very interested in the prospect of having asylum, offering sanctuary in our sacred space.
Yeah, so I might give you the talk from that side if that's okay. Thank you so
Let them stay, 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 let them stay.
The idea that these children and these mothers should not be sent back to Nauru, that Nauru is an inhospitable prison, and that we are utterly ashamed of the Australian government's use of Nauru as a place of detention for women and children.
If the government does let them stay, won't that encourage more people to come here via people smugglers?
So this is just one of those incredible myths that in order to stop people smugglers we have to imprison children. This is a myth. It's been so frequently articulated now that many Australians believe this nonsense, that if we protect the rights of children and mothers and families who want to be refugees or claim asylum status, that somehow the answer to deterring them is to put them in a prison island of Nauru or Manus. That's utterly nonsensical. There are ways that we could process those families here in Australia in community detention that's humane and compassionate and still would answer the worries that Australians have about being flooded. We're not flooded by asylum seekers in this country. It's a very, very, very small, in terms of global numbers of refugees and asylum seekers. Australia sees very few of them.
Free the children, free the children, free the children, free the children.
I spent around 9 months in Curtin Detention Centre, which is in Western Australia, and after 9 months I got released on the temporary protection visa. We people escaped from persecution, from war, but I came here to show the solidarity, to show the people that we are with them.
Refugees are welcome here. Racism, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. Racism, no fear. Welcome here. Racism, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Racism, no fear.
Okay, thank you. The High Court found on Wednesday, maintained the legal fiction that those on Nauru are there because of the Nauru government, not the Australian government. But as the dissenting judgment in the High Court said, it is the Commonwealth Office which allows its agents, its officers, to use force to physically restrain and to assault asylum seekers on Nauru. It is the Australian government that funds the Nauru Detention Centre. It is the Australian government law, the Border Force Act, which silences, which threatens doctors, health workers, psychologists, any workers in the detention centres with 2 years jail if they speak about what they witness. It includes a 5-year-old boy who was allegedly raped. It includes an 11-year-old boy who has told immigration that if he is sent back, he will swallow razor blades. I think it is a crime comparable in ugliness and brutality of the original rapes to send people back to where their rapists are, to where the damage was done. Where no single person has been charged with any of the many documented crimes. No Nauruan has been charged with a crime against a non-Nauruan. Now, it's not all Nauruans, but when nobody is charged, it sends a green light to the thugs who bash and rape and assault asylum seekers. And when the Turnbull government sends them back, it sends that same message that they can get away with that brutality. The High Court also maintains that those refugees are not in detention because to get around the High Court case they made it an open camp. But Nauru remains a prison island. The open camp, people are searched going in and out. They're scanned. They're not allowed to bring anything back into the camp. You can drive around Nauru in 20 minutes. There is no jobs. There is no secure health. There is people living with garbage dumps beside them. Children are abused in schools. Of those 267 people, around 80 are children, around 40 are babies. 32 of those babies were born in Australia. They will never have citizenship rights on Nauru. They could have them if they were allowed to stay here. But today Turnbull made it clear he is going to send people back. There will be no guarantee that those vulnerable people will be allowed to stay in Australia. There will be no end to offshore processing. He claims to be the Prime Minister who cares about domestic violence. He says he has a dream that one day people will know Australia for its reputation of its treatment of women. What about those women on Nauru? He has covered up the extent of sexual abuse on Nauru. It is horrendous what is happening.
I came to Australia as a 10-year-old boy without my parents but with my brother's family. There were 8 of us in that journey. So we fled Afghanistan because of Taliban and seek refuge to come to Australia. So we came by boat. There were 150 people on our boat. And within my family, there were 8 of us. My brother and my sister-in-law, who were the oldest, they were the adults. And the rest, 6 kids, all under 10 years old. I was the oldest, 10. Followed by one of my nephews, Hussein Jamshed, whose dad was already, who took a boat previously and came to Australia, who was there with me. He was only 6. In this journey, at the end, when we were intercepted after 6 days on water, where we had lack of food, lack of medical assistance, and also the fact that there were so many storms, and luckily we survived. And when we got intercepted by the Navy ship of Australia, we were told to make a U-turn and go back to where we came from. Unfortunately, on our boat, there were people who previously made the same journey to come to Australia, but they were forcibly returned by the Navy ship of Australia. So those people actually set the boat on fire. So now, if you can imagine, what I can remember from that exact moment is the thick smoke rising from underneath the boat. And people were just running around, panicking, jumping in the water. And guess what? The Australian Navy ship of Australia was just going around circles and weren't doing anything. It took 2 hours for the Navy ship of Australia to rescue us. That is very shameful. At that incident, within this boat, 150 people, mostly families. I remember I was carrying my nephew's hand just to give him courage when we jumped in the water. At that incident, 2 people lost their lives, and then after that, this was during 2001 when John Howard was in power. In order for them to process our claims, we will need to go to Nauru. Back then, we had no idea where Nauru was. We were just happy at the fact that soon they will process our claims and we will end up in Australia. But guess what? They lied to us. They took us to Naura. I spent 3 years of my childhood there in Naura as a 10-year-old kid. It's just shameful to see our government is still doing the same thing to other people.
Just to talk about Naura, when I was actually landing in Naura, I was sitting on the window seat when we're flying in. The island is so small that I thought, how is the plane even going to land here? That's how small it is. You can literally go around the island in 15 to 20 minutes max. The people who live there, the citizens of Naura, they're all living around the island, because in the middle of the island there is nothing. All the phosphates have been taken out by Australia, and Naura has no money. They're poor. They cannot even take care of their own people. When we were there were just over 5,000 Nauruans, but now including the refugees and asylum seekers that are there, that makes it 10,000 people. I've been to the schools in Nauru. We were taken there temporarily just to see what could happen. Every day fights would erupt between Nauruans and the kids and us, just because we don't know their language, we don't know their tradition, we don't know, they don't even accept us being there. So why is our government dumping their responsibility on smaller nations like Nauru and Manus Island?
There is nothing there. As I said, everything is being taken out by Australia, and now they have made it into one of the prison islands. A prison island where people are denied the rights to freedom and movement and education. That is shameful to see from Australia. I mean, a first world country where we have the possibilities of achieving anything we want to, because we live in Australia, and we can do that. So my message is clear to our government, to our leaders, to our politicians. How long? If Europe, they're going through a crisis at the moment with over 1 million refugees they accepted. Here we are having difficulties with less than 5,000 people, and it's costing us over $5 billion. Come on, people, think of it. Shameful. And hopefully we are gonna take action, and we are going to. If worst comes to worst, we're gonna bring them to our houses and let them stay there, and let the police or whoever wants to come and force them to get out, let them do it. At least, because the reason is because as a human being, our dignity, our value, we know that we have taken an action. We know that we have taken a step to resolve this issue. And for those people that doesn't see that, send that message to them and see what their reactions are. Thank you very much, guys.
We have to ask ourselves, when is this going to end? We have spent billions of dollars of taxpayers' money. We have locked up more than 100,000 people. More than 20,000 of them have been children. We have had children in jail right now in detention centres for over 900 days. These children have one childhood. Turnbull and Dutton are crying crocodile tears and saying they can't afford to lose more lives at sea. Well then, why are they turning ships around and taking those great risks on the open seas if they really care about that? The rotten truth at the heart of our detention system, which was established by Jerry Hand 24 years ago, and don't forget that name. Jerry Hand was the person who introduced this legislation and this regime. This whole system relies on child abuse. It relies on brutality. It relies on ruining people's lives to try and send a message of deterrence to people who need to flee for their lives. It needs to be extreme. It needs to be brutal, because it needs to match the conditions of terror which people are fleeing. It's time for it to end. You're here today. You're here today. There are many thousands of you who are doing amazing things in the community to support refugees. You know, we can bring this to an end, and it is only the Australian people who will do this. We will end this regime with our activism and with our voices. The Greens will be right behind you in Parliament. We have a precedent in Australian history for the Australian people, for the doctors, the nurses, the church leaders, the nuns, the priests, the school children, the university students, the unionists, the trade unionists. All of them got together in the 1950s and the 1960s and brought white Australia to its knees. It took 2 decades before it was finally ended by Gough Whitlam in 1973. It's time for us to build our movement again. This can be the turning point. It can be Turnbull's gift to our movement. This will galvanise us. These 267 people, the thought of those women going back to their rapists on Nauru, the thought of the children being returned to child abuse. This is what will keep us going in the years to come. I thank the grandmothers for refugees. I thank Chill Out. I thank the doctors and the nurses and the social workers. I thank the CFMEU members, the ETU members and all the other trade unionists who stand up against this regime. I thank the school children. I thank the church leaders who are taking a really important step today in declaring their places of worship as sanctuaries. And I have every faith that if we keep working together, we will bring this regime to an end. Thank you.
Proudly the leader of the Textile Clothing and Footwear Union. Our union has many, many members who came to this country as migrants, as refugees and as people seeking asylum. I also am part of the proud Australian trade union movement, and I want to tell you that the Australian trade union movement, as recently in our ACTU Congress just last year, passed unanimous resolutions opposing offshore detention and calling for the closure of Manus Island and Nauru. We will not be fooled by a legal fiction. We will not be fooled by governments that try and contrive and contort legal niceties to create a justification for the unjustifiable ongoing abuse and abandonment of people. And we must remember that this is successive governments. Yes, we must hold Peter Dutton and the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull absolutely accountable for everything that happens in their period of government and power. And in particular, hold them accountable for everything that happens to those 267 people that are on our shores today that face the prospect of immediate deportation because of that decision yesterday. We must remind them that we know within those ranks are women and children who have been abused, who have been sexually assaulted, who have been raped, who have been traumatised on our watch. We must hold them accountable for those 90 children. We must hold them accountable for those 37 babies. 37 babies born here in our hospitals, in our country, in Australia. And do we accept the notion that somehow because they were born to a mother who arrived here on a boat, that they have no rights and that they should be locked up indefinitely in an offshore hellhole? You know, this notion that somehow we pretend these people never came to Australia, that we pretend that we have no control, no authority, no power over the operation of Nauru and Manus Island. We will not be fooled. We will not be fooled. We won't be convinced by legal fiction. We will not be part of the lie and the cover-up.
What is happening here tonight is happening in cities across Australia at lunchtime and now. We will be on the streets over the next few days. You see the churches have come out. Next week there are more groups coming out to speak out. We see our grandmothers standing here, grandmothers, wise old women who know what it is to stand up for children. We see the unions, we see a lot of people coming out and saying to the government, enough, enough. We want human rights now, and we want them for everyone, including the 267. We cannot let them go, and we won't, will we?
It is apparently now legal for this country to run a tropical gulag. It may well be legal, but we know that it is not right. We know that it is wrong to do what the Australian government is doing to refugees in our name. We also know from history that there have been many laws made in many countries over the years that are not right. And we know that when the laws are not right, it is actually the citizens' duty to defy those laws. So I'm calling on everyone to defy the laws as you can to help the refugees stay in this country. The ones that are being threatened with being sent back to the gulag. And I'm very pleased to say that the Victorian Trades Hall Council will open the hall as a refuge for refugees. Victorian unions for over 150 years have been protecting the interests and looking after the vulnerable and the oppressed. We will continue to do that, and I tell you what, we will defend them to the utmost, and I'll tell Mr. Turnbull this as well, we will defend our hall, so try and come and get them. Thank you.
Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Okay, we are about to head off. The speakers will be taken to the other end. If someone with a megaphone could bring it, so we've got it for me on the way. Is everybody happy to have a sit down at Burke Street at an exhibition? If you are, raise your hands. Let's go. Is anybody not happy? I suppose we can vote with our feet. As we march, I want the whole of Melbourne to hear. I want to say, let them stay the whole way. So if we can start chanting and we can start heading off, we're going down Swanson.
Peter Dutton's position, the Immigration Minister, is that if he allows these people to stay in Australia, then that will encourage people smugglers to bring more people to Australia, and consequently there'll be more drownings.
If Peter Dutton and Malcolm Turnbull really want to solve the people smuggling problem that they believe exists, they need to look at Australia's family reunion laws. Over the last 20 years, Australian governments, consecutive Australian governments, have reduced the family reunion quotas to the extent that now we have a 20 or 30-year waiting list for people to be reunited with their families. The reality is that most of the asylum seekers who get on boats are seeking to come to Australia for a reason. A lot of them are coming to Australia because they have family members in the community in Australia. We need to look at our family reunion laws and reinstate them so that people are not forced to pay people smugglers to reunite with their immediate family members and to rebuild their lives.
believe that our country, our beautiful free country, is treating refugees like this. It's not a crime to seek asylum. Everybody under the UN has the right to be free and to be free of torture and to be... That's why these children have come, that's why these people have come. They're not terrorists. They simply want to have a life where they're free from fear and free from want and hunger. That's why I'm here, and I'm asking all Australians to get behind this, to make the government, make the Labor Party as well, do something that's different from the race to the bottom, to make life better for little children who've never asked for this sort of treatment.
And I've heard lots of stories of these dear folk who are broken and need compassion and support. And I believe that it's time that our government took a more compassionate approach.
Are you prepared to offer your church for a sanctuary for refugees?
This weekend I've called an emergency church council meeting so that our church council can actually get its head around what this means. Yes, we were named as the only Victorian church in the newspapers this morning in that list of mostly other Anglican churches, cathedrals around Australia. Our people are very interested in the prospect of having asylum, offering sanctuary in our sacred space. We've been overwhelmed with an amazing lot of support out of the community today. People have got no particular interest or connection in church who come to us and said, we really value and appreciate what you're doing.
So what are you here for today? We're here to support refugees, of which, as you can hear from the chants around us, are welcome here. And that's what we believe. We believe as coming from different backgrounds and different families in Australia, that our multicultural country needs refugees welcome. Thank you so much.
Let them stay! Let them stay! Let them stay! Let them stay!
The High Court ruled, as I guess in a way it was compelled to rule, the real issue is the law is immoral and wrong. And I think that cracks are appearing that I haven't seen in recent years. I think the government is now, for the first time in a long time, on the back foot.
You can put a petition around your work. You can start a meeting. You can get things happening where you are. And that is what we need to do if we are going to break Fortress Australia and break the brutality that is being inflicted on refugees and asylum seekers here and offshore.
I do visit Melbourne Immigration Transit Accommodation, which is another hellhole here in Broadmeadows, with high fences and barbed wire and the rest of it. We visit regularly, and yesterday when we all went in to visit, there were no words. There were no words to the Tamil woman with the 3 children from Naura who is in danger of being sent back, to the Iranian family who we visit. The looks on their faces were just utter devastation, and I must say we all walked out of there just feeling absolutely kind of hopeless. But what we did say to them was, we will put our bodies on the line, and you know that's it. That's what we've got, our bodies and our hearts. And when I woke up today and I saw the Let Them Stay trending, you know, we've been campaigning for years, and I'm like, oh, this is good. And then I saw the article about the, you know, the sanctuaries of giving all the churches giving sanctuary. I went, this is what needs to be done. The law has to be broken. There needs to be mass civil disobedience. Mass civil disobedience. Because we need to get our bodies out to those centres physically. You know, when we get texts from our friends to say they're coming in the morning, they're going to come in the middle of the night, you know, and put us on planes, we need to be able to get all of you out there, right? Get on right now. Go home. Right? Yes, sign the petition, but don't just sign the petition. They don't give a shit in that parliament. I'm so sorry, they don't. They don't. We do. We do. Right?
We've done what we can, but the biggest problem that we've always had is that we haven't had the numbers. We've been able to get 100, 200 people out there to put their bodies on the line and try and stop these forced transfers and deportations, but we haven't had the numbers. So what we need to do differently now is we need these numbers. We need to have large numbers of people coming out to detention centres on short notice. Sometimes we only get 2-3 hours notice. So one of the things that I want to say is that we need to be mentally prepared, and we need to get other people that we know mentally prepared to go to these detention centres at short notice to be ready to act over the next couple of weeks. This is the most important time. I've just started up a Facebook group called Anti-deportation Snap Actions Melbourne. We're going to post any call-outs on that as well. But, you know, watch social media, but just talk to people and be ready to act.
Because one of the things that's happening today is, as bad as things are in Australia, and they're worse than anywhere else in the world, everywhere else around the world we're seeing a trend towards similar appalling treatment of asylum seekers. Look at America at the moment. You have a potential presidential candidate, Donald Trump, who advocates banning all Muslims from migrating into the country, who calls Mexican people rapists and drug dealers. You have Northern European countries like Sweden and Denmark who are confiscating all the assets from asylum seekers when they arrive in those countries. Even their wedding rings or necklaces get taken from them by the government. Look at Britain under David Cameron. Look at France. All of these countries, all of these enlightened democracies around the world, stimulating more and more racism, attacking refugees more and more, whipping up xenophobia at every...
I spent this morning with a family who are in community detention, who have been told that they will be going back to Naura after their medical appointments are finished here in Australia in a few months. I spent time holding their 3-week-old baby and just wondering what is going to happen to this baby. What will happen to this child? What will happen? What kind of a country allows a baby to be born and to have no identity, to have no chance to live a life that we're so privileged to live? What kind of people would sit there and say that that's okay? That it's okay to send a child to school and then rip them out of school and send them to Nauru? That it's okay to keep people locked up in Maita, my brothers, my friends, my sisters, and then send them back to Nauru, even though people who are seeking asylum belong in our communities? They belong next to us in our workplaces, in our streets, on our trains, in our parks, at our barbecues in our backyard. That's where they belong. I would like everybody to put your hand on your heart and make a promise to yourself and to the people that we are standing here for today. Make this promise. I promise that I won't stop standing up for you until you are in our communities. Feel your beating heart. That is the beating heart of every child in detention. That is the beating heart of every mother, father, brother, sister in detention. We are one. My heart beats at the same rate as theirs. And all of us need to stand together because people who are seeking asylum belong in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, we just had a really excellent rally. It was about 5,000 people, and it ended with a speak out of people talking about where to from here. There was a lot of speakers saying that we're going to have to mobilise for anti-deportation actions. We're going to have to put our bodies on the line, sit down either in front of detention centres or the cathedral or the trades hall, other places that have declared themselves sanctuaries for refugees. And there was also talk of emulating the action that doctors and other health professionals and workers have taken, like the teachers as well, to make sure that there is a widespread, broad support, and that this feeling that we had today, you know, it turns into something very tangible, and it's people, you know, actually saying civil disobedience, industrial disobedience, we're going to stop any deportations that the government threatens.